Engineers develop water filtration system that permanently removes forever chemicals. Engineers at the University of British Columbia have developed a filtration system that would permanently remove forever chemicals from drinking water. This news comes after a recent study revealed nearly 200 million Americans have been exposed to PFAS in their tap water. Dr. Majid Mohseni, a professor at British Columbia, shares his research. Nurses strike, A&E, cancer and intensive care units hit for first time. Nurses across half of England's NHS trusts have begun a fresh strike, which will last until midnight on May 2. This is the third such walkout this year and affects cancer services, A&E, and intensive care. It is the first time that some nurses from these areas have gone on strike. The Royal College of Nursing, RCN, union rejected the government's offer of a 5% pay rise and will meet on May 3 with NHS bosses and other unions to discuss pay, recruitment and retention. RCN leader Pat Cullen denied suggestions that the union had spoken to Health Secretary Steve Barclay over the weekend and said the strike is taking place because the NHS is totally broken. ISIS leader Abu Hussein al-Qurashi killed in Syria. It has been reported that Abu al-Hussein al-Qurashi, the top leader and self-proclaimed caliph of the Islamic State group, ISIS, was killed in a Turkish operation in northern Syria. According to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, al-Qurashi was neutralized in an operation carried out by Turkish forces. The operation took place on Saturday when Turkish forces stormed a house in a village near Cindires and clashed with ISIS fighters at the compound, eventually surrounding al-Qurashi. He refused to surrender and then blew himself up with explosives strapped to his body. Al-Qurashi became the fourth leader of ISIS in November 2022, and his predecessor's death was announced by the group. The founder of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was killed by U.S. forces in 2019. ISIS occupied roughly one-third of Syria and Iraq at its peak in 2014, but its so-called caliphate has all but disappeared. And it now controls only small pockets of land. Air defenses shoot down 15 of 18 missiles launched at Ukraine in dead of night. The situation in Ukraine remains tense as Russia has intensified its attacks on the country in recent days. Ukrainian air defense crews reportedly destroyed 15 out of 18 missiles launched by Russian forces in the early hours of Monday morning. Moscow reportedly launched missiles at various Ukrainian regions, including Kyiv and Dnipropetrovsk, causing damage to residential and industrial buildings. No casualties among the civilian population or destruction of infrastructure have been reported so far, according to the Kyiv city administration. Russian officials claimed that some recent strikes were aimed at hampering Kyiv's plans for a long-planned counter-offensive in the east. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia has been ongoing since 2014, with Russia annexing Crimea and supporting separatist rebels in eastern Ukraine. 2 teens killed, 4 hurt in Mississippi house party shooting. 2 teenagers were killed and at least 4 others were wounded in a shooting at a house party in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi on Sunday. The suspect, 19-year-old Cameron Everest Brand, was arrested on 6 counts of aggravated assault. 2 of the victims, an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, were pronounced dead at a hospital in New Orleans. The other victims, aged between 15 and 18, were taken to nearby hospitals with 1 remaining in critical condition and 3 in serious condition. The motive for the shooting is under investigation. Brand is currently being held without bail. Adidas sued by investors over Kanye West deal. Adidas is facing a lawsuit filed by investors who claim that the company knew about Kanye West's problematic behavior for years before ending their partnership last year. The investors allege that Adidas failed to limit financial losses and take precautionary measures to minimize their exposure. Adidas terminated its collaboration with West, who designed a line of successful trainers under the Yeezy brand, following anti-Semitic comments. The company said it rejects the unfounded claims and will defend itself vigorously. The investors allege that Adidas knew about other questionable behavior by West, and they claim that senior executives discussed how to mitigate the risk of staff interacting with him as well as the possibility of cutting ties with the rapper. Since parting ways with West, Adidas has launched an investigation after reports he created a toxic environment at the company. Brazil's president, the UN was so strong enough to create Israel, but now can't create a Palestinian state. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva criticized the UN for failing to create a Palestinian state while it was able to create Israel in 1948. During an official visit to Spain, Lula expressed his astonishment at the limited role non-member states play in the international organization and asked the UN Security Council not to limit itself to its permanent members. He suggested creating a new international mechanism that would do things differently and advocated for the creation of a G20 of peace, which should be the UN. His calls were slammed by the pro-Israel group Stand With Us Brazil, which claimed that Israel was not created by the United Nations, but through a war waged by Arab armies against Jews. They also argued that the UN or other international organizations currently do not have the role of creating a state for Palestinians, unless Israelis and Palestinians themselves come to seal the peace independently.